Hello, and welcome to the Cycle Starters podcast. This podcast is made just for you if you're breaking intergenerational patterns and turning ancestral wounds into creative potential, embody joy, and intergenerational abundance. I am your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and I am passionate about ancestral healing and growth, as well as astrology and pleasure as transformative medicine. And I'm here to help you elevate your consciousness and promote joy in your life. I truly believe everyone can become a cycle starter, reshaping their lineage and fostering growth and healing. So we're here to support you in letting go of anything that's holding you back from your fullest expression and healing, growth, and transformation. If you are ready to be inspired on your journey of transformation and create a life that aligns with your true self, you are in the right place. So please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, and follow us on social media platforms. And you can learn more about what I do and how I can support you along your ancestral healing journey on my website, which is heatherrebeccawilson.com. And then please feel free to contact me. You can DM me any topics you'd like to cover, share your takeaways, or even better, you can send me a screenshot of your review and I will send you a thank you gift. So let's get into it. Today, I am so excited to introduce to you our special guest, the incredible Melissa Saleh. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
I'm going to read your bio and then we're going to get into our conversation. So, Melissa spent her career at the intersection of technology and human behavior. Since 2004, she has combined storytelling and bleeding-edge technology to build successful products, companies, and brands. She is currently working on a stealth project in the consumer AI space. In 2020, she co-founded Fairplay AI, the world's first fairness as a service company. Prior to that, she created and executed narrative strategies for companies including Facebook, Google, Citibank, and GE. After founding the content strategy firm Brickwall Media in 2013, she built up a roster of Fortune 500 clients and worked extensively with early-stage companies to develop their mission, voice, and brand narrative, then communicate them powerfully to the world. As a journalist and editor, she launched and ran digital properties for the New York Times, Newsweek, Discover Magazine, and others. She began her career as a labor and employment lawyer in New York City, then transitioned to media by founding the internationally acclaimed blog Opinionistas, which revealed life inside the world's toniest law firms. She has written for the New York Times, the New York Observer, Wired, the Huffington Post, Daily Beast, and others, and has appeared on air for CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News, Fox Business, and NPR. She received her JD from UVA School of Law and her BA from Dartmouth. I love reading your resume out loud. You are a very accomplished human being.
It's funny listening to you read that. I'm like, oh, she sounds interesting. Who's that woman?
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. So, full disclosure, Melissa and I are very good friends, and we've been friends since 1985. We were in the same second grade class. So Melissa transferred to another school. When was this? Junior high, 7th grade?
Yeah, 7th grade. I transferred. Yeah.
Right. So I didn't see her for many, many years. And we, lived totally separate lives and then ran into each other, I think 2017 in Venice.
It would have been early to mid.
Okay. So it was 2018. So, I was very surprised to walk into my favorite coffee shop that I still go to all the time and see a dear old friend sitting there. So that was awesome. So you are definitely a gift in my life. I love how the universe has brought us together again. So let's see, where do we start? So you have so generously created this offering for the Ancestral Healing Collective, which is my monthly membership. And it is for female-bodied cycle breakers and cycle starters who are looking to alchemize deep ancestral wounds into creative potential, shifts to higher consciousness, and embodied joy, with astrology and pleasure as transformative medicine. And one of the perks of this membership is that you get access to an amazing guest expert each month who leads a live experience. So back in June of this year, you so generously led a workshop called The Power of Ancestral Trauma Healing, One Woman's Journey, where you shared so powerfully and so vulnerably about a really important moment in your life, a life-changing moment, and how that impacted you going forward. And so we're going to get into that in a bit. So thank you for offering that workshop. And my first question for you is, what is your ancestry?
My ancestry is pretty easy. I am 99.6% Ashkenazi Jewish. There's really nothing else in there.
Okay, awesome.
Most of my relatives came over from Eastern Europe in the late 1800s, early 1900s. A few from Western Europe as well, but yeah, we are Ashkenazi Jews.
Okay, excellent. So, all right. So this very, very beautiful and empowering offering that is inside of our resource library in the Ancestral Healing Collective. And if you're interested in joining, by the way, you can go to my website, heatherrebeccawilson.com, and you can learn all about it and join us. But Melissa, how did you get to the place of developing that offering and sharing your unique medicine, your story in this format? And I know that that's a big question.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
Well, my unique medicine is my story. I'm not a practicing healer. I have trained in healing modalities, but I'll be honest, I selfishly trained in healing modalities to work on myself. I did not train as a one-on-one healer. I trained to heal myself so that I could tell stories to heal others. I mean, I healed because I had to, because I had no other option. You know, my story is extreme. My story is not one that I ever wanted or would wish on anybody, but it happened. And I went through an incredible life-changing trauma and loss at the same time. And that, I like to say, it excommunicated me from the sort of normal world. Like, it jettisoned me out of normal society. Trauma does that. Trauma, as Sun Tzu would say, burns your bridges. It makes it so that there is no going back to the life you knew before, the reality you knew before. There is only going forward to some totally brave new world, and finding the faith to keep going, because trauma and tragic loss are not like other wounds. It's not like you break a leg and you're in a cast for 6 weeks and it hurts and it's uncomfortable and painful, but you're in a cast for 6 weeks. And at the end of the 6 weeks, you know that cast is going to come off and your leg will be healed. This is not like that. You are thrust into incredible pain and incredible unknowns and a whole new way of experiencing life through trauma. And you don't know if you're ever going to get better. Nobody can tell you you're going to get better. Western medicine certainly doesn't tell you. They tell you, well, go be on a prescription for the rest of your life. You now have PTSD. Tough. I simply refuse to accept that. I have a very, very, very deep personality trait, which is that when someone tells me I can't do something or when someone tells me something is impossible, I immediately go into a few watch. And that's just been my personality since I was very young. So went through this trauma. I come out of it. I'm diagnosed with PTSD. I'm told, well, here's benzos and here's SSRIs. Pick poison, so to speak. And I said, no, option C. I will find a way. I will find a way through this and I will find a way out of it. And Western medicine said, haha, that's hilarious. And I said, hold my beer. And that's why I have studied healing so aggressively and zealously. And because I had a lot at stake. I had my life at stake, quite literally, my life at stake. I wasn't going to live with PTSD for the rest of my life. I wasn't going to live with crippling grief and trauma for the rest of my life. It's not a lie. So I spent 10 years this past August studying and practicing healing modalities, working with alternative healers, and working on the fringes of Western medicine, with traditional therapists who do things like EMDR, cognitive behavioral therapy. And then I get to LA and it's this incredible mecca of alternative healing. And I met a woman who had gotten a degree in spiritual psychology. Now, you tell certain sectors back in New York, oh, yes, I see someone with a degree in spiritual psychology, and they will laugh at you. Well, guess what? That woman transformed my life more than any Harvard-educated psychiatrist or traditional therapist or anybody out of any fancy pedigree on the East Coast or West Coast. So I don't believe in this sort of societal view of what is correct or superior knowledge or what makes someone smart. I don't believe in healing through intellectualism. I was taught to believe that everything is intellectualized, and I have since unlearned that, and that was absolutely essential to my healing.
Oh my goodness. So let's talk about this workshop first, because like I said before, you share very vulnerably and very powerfully a life-changing moment for you. Like everything shifted, right? The path of your life, the trajectory of your life completely shifted. So the offering is called The Power of Ancestral Trauma Healing: One Woman's Journey. So for folks who are interested in hearing your story, right? Attending this workshop, what do they need to know beforehand, and how can they best prepare for getting the most out of the experience? And I normally don't start off with this question, but I feel like it's important because I feel like it's kind of like foundational for our conversation. So what could you say to somebody who's interested in attending this workshop or watching this recording?
Oh man, that's a good question. I mean, it's tough for me to know what people get out of my journey. I'm still only just beginning to share it. So I don't have a lot of, in startup land, we'd call it A/B testing, or I'd go do, market testing of like, well, what did you learn from this? And what was interesting about it to you? And would you engage with this person or product again? I don't have any of that data. So I don't really know. What are people getting? Are they getting anything? I hope they are. The trauma specifically is birth trauma. I lost my first child at birth. Or I was in labor at 9 months pregnant, and she inexplicably passed away. And I was told, you must give birth right now to your baby who has died, or else your life could be in danger too. And that occurred on August 15th, 2014. And anybody who has had any kind of trauma like that can tell you there is life before that day, and then there is life after that day. And absolutely nothing would ever be the same or will ever be the same after that day. There are lots of different kinds of traumas that destroy your world like that. This one, I believe, is somewhat unique in its societal taboo, in its sort of lack of open discussion. It's a body trauma, so it's you can liken it to being a victim of sexual assault, but you also lose a child. And then you have a society that then wants to debate you over, well, did you lose a child the way somebody who lost an 8-year-old does? I mean, it's the amount of analysis and judgment. It's not totally different from being a rape victim. Well, were you wearing something provocative? Were you doing something, that you shouldn't have been doing? It's not totally different, but there are different elements to it because you have the grief. You have the grief of your baby who is now gone. And you also have the trauma. And you have to recover from a birth. And you have to deal with everyone in society and their opinions on what happened, because there is no hiding this. There is no secret. And then you have to figure out how to live in a world where something like that not only can happen, but can happen to you. And they never found a reason for her death. This was one of the best hospitals in the Upper East Side, one of the top high risk medical practices on the Upper East Side. And I was in my 30s. She was a healthy size when she was born. There's just no explanation for why this happened. And it didn't happen to all these other people around you, but it happened to you and arguably destroyed your life. And you are now left with this, holding this bag. And you are often extremely isolated. Nobody even wanted to talk about it on social media, on anything. Nobody wanted to hear about it. And 10 years later, that's changed somewhat. It's still a very taboo topic, but it's changed somewhat. And I'm glad to see that. And it took me a full 10 years to truly, come out of that experience. I'll be affected by it for the rest of my life. She was my child. Like, I ask people when they don't understand, and then I'll be like, do you have children? Well, yes. Do you love your child? Yes, of course I love my child. Well, I love mine too. I now have 2 healthy children, but I love my first child too, just as much as you do. She's dead. And I've had to make peace with death. I've had to make peace with God. All these things that were not on the agenda, I have had no choice but to do. And that's what it is. It just is, literally is what it is.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry that you went through this.
Thank you.
It's so heartbreaking. And it pisses me off so much that we don't really support women enough when they go through these experiences. Just like I'm so annoyed with just women's health in general. You just said that you had the 10-year anniversary of your daughter's passing this past August. And it's been a long journey for you. And this is something you said that's changed your life forever, right? And it's not something that you get over. But what would you say, knowing what you know now, what would you say to the Melissa from 10 years ago who just went through this experience? Because I know that there are so many women out there who have gone through this recently, right? And they don't know.
And are still devastated by it.
Right, exactly. What would be your healing words or words of wisdom or words of comfort to
I honestly,
yourself 10 years ago?
I wouldn't say anything. I would get down in the darkness with them. That's what I needed. I need somebody who was willing. The most common thing you hear, I'm so sorry for your loss. I can't even imagine. And you're like, try. Because I'm down here in the darkness. So try, because you're not down here in the darkness. And I don't see how I deserve to be down here, but I'm here. And I don't know if I'm ever getting out. There's no one telling me how to get out. There's no one telling me it'll be okay. You will get out. There's nobody. There was nobody. I looked for that person who had not only gone through this loss, but had truly transcended, had truly come out of it and made a life that I could look up to and say, oh my God, if she did it, I can do it too. There was no one in human history. There are some celebrities that have had stillbirths and infant loss. They either tend to be men, and no disrespect to men, but it's a totally different experience. Elon Musk losing his first child at 10 days old is devastating, but he didn't bear that child. He didn't birth that child. I know it's devastating. I'm not trying to take away his pain, but it's not the same thing. Same for Keanu Reeves. Same for Prince. These are all celebrities that have had stillborn children or children that passed as infants. Oprah had a stillborn baby. She was 13, and it was a pregnancy as a result of rape. That's horrific. How she transcended that, I would love to know, but she never speaks about it, ever. And she didn't have any more children. And you can tell that there's still such a wound there. She doesn't speak about it. So I knew I wanted more children. This was my first child. And I had to fight to have, through miscarriages and the rest, to have this pregnancy. So there was nobody. I deeply admire Oprah, but I didn't want her life. I wanted children and a family and my career. I wanted all of the same things that I had wanted before. And there was nobody, literally no one. So what I seek to do now is be that person. And I'm writing a book and I'm doing these podcasts because I'm talking to the me from 10 years ago. I'm not saying I have it all figured out and I'm not saying I have the perfect life, but like I have found a way. I have two stunning, incredible children. I have, I lost my marriage after that first loss. I lost my company that I had founded. I lost my financial security. I lost most of my friends and connections and professional reputation. The losses just, as Elizabeth Bishop would say, the art of losing isn't hard to master. Once you start losing everything, it kind of spirals and you just keep on losing. I had a moment where I was like, I could become homeless, quite literally. I have been ejected from society. I've lost my social safety net. That could be a pathway for me. It could. It was not a 0% chance. I turned it around with the help of many. And here I am. I have built a life far more beautiful than any life I could imagine at that time. Far more beautiful than anything I had in New York. I have created new career experiences and opportunities. I have a beautiful second marriage, and my daughters are the most incredible human beings on the planet. I know I'm biased, but I don't care. This life is truly a beautiful thing. And it's still hard. It doesn't go away. It doesn't erase the pain. My pain load is very high, as is the pain load of any woman who has experienced miscarriage, stillbirth, infant loss, infertility. I mean, this is a high pain load that is not acknowledged in our society. I don't live in, this perfect joy world. I will always have this pain, and I will always have this trauma. And I have beat PTSD, but that doesn't mean that it's completely gone. I get some really brutal triggers sometimes. I have had to learn to live with it and manage it so that it does not stop me, so that I can get up and keep going no matter what. I can get up and be the mom that I want to be the executive at work that I want to be the writer and speaker that I want to be the wife I want to be, and the friend I want to be. I can show up in the world the way that I want to show up. I can do work that I'm proud of. I can have fun with my kids and, help their development and give them memories. That's who I am actively being today. I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. That's really a huge part of my work and who I am. So I'm writing a book. I'm writing the book that I needed 10 years ago. Honestly, I didn't want anyone's advice. I didn't want anyone to tell me what to do. If you were a human being, I wanted you to sit in the darkness with me and keep me company. Be willing to do that for me. And then a book or, a podcast or something that would I don't have to interact and I don't have to deal with another human being. Just feed me. Just give me something, even if it's like a little ray of hope. That's what I needed. So that's what I strive to give myself from 10 years ago now.
So what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you at the time were surrounded with people who had a serious lack of empathy, right? They were unable to hold space for you or get down in the darkness with you.
Well, look, I don't want to make this into, these people. I think it's a cultural issue that American culture does not handle death well. We do not handle tragic, unexpected death well. And when you're talking about children, babies in particular, that is not the cultural expectation. That's not anybody's expectation. We do not have a culture or a system that really allows for this sort of loss and supports it when it happens. So I don't want to make this into a, these people, blah, blah, blah. I had support at the beginning. I did. There were some, I have some incredible friends who did things for me that I still am hearing about. And I'm like, I cannot even believe you did this for me. And I don't know how I will ever repay them. I had some incredible people, but the amount of support that you need in something like this is above and beyond. And I did not have the support of some very key people. And I have had to sort of, remove myself from that environment and from a lot of those people because it's clearly not a match for me anymore. Who I am now, let's just say if you know me, you're going to know that I went through infant loss. And you're going to know a person who's very different than how she showed up 10 years ago. I'm still me. I haven't changed me. In fact, I'm much more myself than I ever was 10 years ago. I was so repressed, which is why I had people around me who were also repressed. So when I became unrepressed through trauma, I was no longer a match for them. And so it never would have worked. Nobody's the hero and nobody's the villain, but it really shook up everyone in my life in terms of who would remain in my life. And a lot of people didn't want to be around me anymore. They didn't want to be around trauma. They didn't want to have to sort of see that or cope with that or accept that it existed. That's entirely their choice. I think if you're going to live in this world, you need to accept that there are some terrible things happening, and they are happening to some people that you know. As far as empathy, it's a really hard thing. We do not have cultural empathy for women around so many things. We don't have cultural empathy for women around rape. We don't have cultural empathy for women around infant loss. We blame the victim. We blame the woman. Oh, she must have done something wrong. Or we find a way to deflect so that we don't have to feel the pain or truly internalize that this happens. And that's pretty shitty, excuse my language. And when you're the one, it's really shitty. And the other horrible aspect that I don't know if it's just a sign of something really off in our culture or capitalism, I don't know. And I'm a capitalist, but this desire to exploit the pain of people who lose children for political purposes, for media, book selling purposes, for, TV and film, news media. It's a really, really twisted, messed up aspect of our culture. You see it right now in the political campaign where one party has now invoked two parents who have lost children and used their losses to make a political point. One of the fathers even said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, to use a rap lyric, keep my son's name out of your goddamn mouth. Do not bring my child, my loss, and my trauma into your career goals or your little book or your political campaign or your magazine article. Like, keep my child's name out of your damn mouth or your, and that makes me very angry. I've had personal experience with it, and I've now seen it for so many other grieving parents, and we do it to women like it's nothing, and it's really sick.
It's very sick. Yeah, it's disgusting. So yeah, we have a lot of healing to do in the collective around everything you've mentioned, just, having empathy for women around SA, infant loss, birth trauma, all these things. And I do believe that you are one of the people who are here to elevate the collective consciousness and anchor a new frequency on the planet. So thank you for, sharing your story. And I just really appreciate you. Yeah, and you are doing your best. You are. So I want to shift the conversation ever so slightly because these things are related, but this is the Cycle Starters podcast, and we talk a lot of ancestral healing here. And so, what can you share with us about your ancestral healing journey so far? And I believe it's related to what happened 10 years
Yeah.
ago. So, what can you share about that?
I'm in the hospital. They've taken my daughter to the morgue, and I speak to my mother for the first time since I had learned that she died. My mother tells me something that I will never forget. She says, "Oh, the exact same thing happened to your grandmother." And I was like, "What?" No one had ever told me that my grandmother's first child, a boy, had been stillborn at a hospital in Georgetown. No one had ever spoken about it, ever. She went to her grave never speaking about it. I was so shocked. The coincidences are creepy. I mean, you want more evidence of generational trauma? I don't know how to give you more evidence than that. I just went, oh my God. And it explained, now having gone through it, it explains so much to me about my grandmother. Because also, she didn't just lose that baby. She then went on to have 2 more. But her husband, never super mentally well. My grandfather was a schizophrenic. He devolved very rapidly and became a danger to his wife and children. This was the 50s. There were not fantastic drugs. There were not fantastic medical regimens. His options were going to sanatorium. He basically left his home, became homeless, and he was a brilliant political scholar. He used to write memos for White House press briefings about foreign propaganda technique. He had his graduate degree from the University of Chicago. Brilliant political scholar, Harold Elston. He died homeless under a bridge with severe schizophrenia. My grandmother was left alone with the huge stigma of her husband just having left her. I'm like, well, he didn't run off with his secretary, okay? He didn't leave her. He succumbed to mental illness, but society didn't see it that way. And then she had 2 young children to raise with all of the trauma of having lost her first and having nobody want to talk about it. When I learned that, I was like, oh, Nana makes a lot more sense to me now. That woman was so traumatized and she carried so much pain. It's astonishing that she still functioned, and she functioned at a very high level. She had a career in government. She helped create the START program, which has helped millions of children. When she died, we found a handwritten note from Eleanor Roosevelt inviting my grandmother to tea at the White House. She, in a time when women didn't exactly have doors wide open to them for meaningful careers in government, she fought her way in, and she had a full government career, retired with a pension, and raised those 2 kids. And my mother became a doctor, and my uncle, before he passed young, became a lawyer. So I look at that woman's life and I'm like, she did it sick, in pain, grieving, traumatized. Look what she did. How can I honor her? Well, why don't I heal? Why don't I remove the trauma and the pain and the sickness and all of that? Because she did a lot of emotional damage because she was in so much pain. She hurt everybody around her a lot. And I'm not blaming her. I understand why. But she caused a lot of damage and a lot of collateral damage, and a lot of pain because she was so hurt. So I was kind of like, well, imagine what I could do for the next generation of our family if I'm not traumatized and I'm not carrying this generational curse and these pains and this trauma and all of this. So that fueled me 10 times in my healing work. And I am very proud that my daughters exhibit none of the mental illness traits that are pretty prevalent in a lot of the generations in my family. My daughters are healthy. They're securely attached. They are normal in all of their developmental and physical functionalities. And they are set up to have great lives and to go do great things in the world. And that is a victory for me over the past. And when my grandmother passed away, she passed away when I was pregnant with my first child. She passed away a few months before my eldest daughter was born / died. I inherited a couple things from her, 2 pieces of art. And one is a painting of Notre Dame in Paris, and then another is a painting of some horses, and they're, very lovely. And one of those paintings is hanging in one of my daughter's room, and the other is in my other daughter's room. It's a way of honoring their great grandmother. And also, that woman was the strongest. She was made of oak. She was the strongest rock ever. So no bad energy is getting in my daughter's rooms with those paintings hanging there. My grandmother's watching over her grandmother. I don't feel seen very often in this world. I don't feel like anybody really knows what I've truly been through. Maybe they do, and I just haven't found my people. I don't know. But like what I've actually been through and what I've had to do and the battles I've had to fight and what I have had to overcome and see in order to create this. And I should add, I conceived with my husband both of these babies in our 40s completely naturally. I had the babies completely naturally at the ages of 42 and 43. No fertility assistance, no real medical. I mean, I had them in hospitals, but no medical intervention other than that. That was never a given. I certainly had fertility issues in my 30s. What I have had to do in order to transform everything so massively. I don't feel particularly seen by this world. That's another reason I'm writing a book. It's because I'm like, I just need somewhere to put this story. Also, so my daughters, when they're old enough, can read the narrative of how the women in their family were and how they came to be. That's important to me. But I feel that my grandmother gets it. She's not alive, but if anyone gets it, she gets it.
Well, she's in another form. She's in the non-physical. And I love how you're honoring her by placing this artwork of hers in both of your beautiful daughters' bedrooms. Well, so what?
They are pretty beautiful, aren't they? You know them.
Yes,
They're
I
pretty
do know
incredible.
them. I
every
know and
mother's
love
like,
them.
I know every mother's like, my children are the best, but like mine actually kind of are.
They're fantastic. They are wonderful. So can you speak to the specific patterns in your family that you are dissolving and breaking? Because I think it helps our viewers, our listeners, maybe say yes to this work. And every ancestral healing journey is unique to each individual. But I do think it helps people who are just at the beginning to kind of hear from other people. Like, what were you changing in your family? What was passed down to you?
Oof. I mean, where do I even begin to start? I mean, I was raised by a mother with borderline personality disorder, and she has good reason for having borderline personality disorder. When you're raised by a woman who's that traumatized, and my mother's most heartbreaking story is she was maybe 3-4 years old, and she's like, I stood at the door every day for months waiting for my daddy to come home, and he never came. And that just breaks my heart that my mother went through that. And I see my daughters now, and my husband boxes every morning in the garage, and sometimes he'll go out for a quick swim. We live by the ocean, and he'll go out for a quick swim or something. And my younger daughter, I found her standing in the garage, and I was like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm waiting for daddy to come. And I lost it, because I was like, that's exactly what my mother went through, and she never got an answer why. And I mean, what am I doing? I'm trying to heal all of this from my perspective. I can't heal my mother for her. That's her life and her journey. But I can do whatever I can to change my own patterns and to not bring any borderline behavior. And I believe mental illness is the result of going through a lot of severe trauma mixed with some inherited traits. But I believe it's very nature or nurture. And I think that my mother did do some things to save me from really having worse mental health than I did. But I worked tremendously hard to change my patterns of reacting to things, and also change my mindset and framework. People don't talk about the upsides of quote unquote mental illness or the upsides of personality disorders. There are few upsides. My mother has incredible capacity for emotion, much deeper than most people. She also has an incredibly well-developed intuition, because part of borderline personality is that like you can shapeshift. Like a lot of actors are borderline personalities because you know how to step out of you and step into someone else. And that's a superpower. That's a really powerful gift. So part of what I do is reframe and be like, can we stop talking about all of this as if it's this horrible curse that makes this person worthless? It's not. I read a recent book by a therapist who treats borderline patients, and he talks about this one woman, and he and his wife were expecting their first child, and he was finding a way to break the news to his patients because he had to let his patients know that he would be taking some paternity leave. And this woman comes to the office with he had not said a word to her. And she knew. She just knew, oh, you're having a baby, aren't you? What kind of incredible intuition is that? Why are we not recognizing that about this woman and saying, you should be in some very advanced role where we are using your intuition? Yes, you have extreme emotional reactions, and it's very difficult for you to lead a quote unquote normal life. But guess what? You have genius too. And why is nobody recognizing the genius? Same with schizophrenia, quite frankly. Yes, you can become extremely dangerous to yourself and others, and you must manage schizophrenia. You need to manage borderline personality disorder too. These are not just things that like, oh, transcend. But there's a flip side. People are brilliant. Schizophrenic people tend to be brilliant. So why is our only conversation about mental illness that it's this evil, horrible thing, and people who have mental illness should be cast out by society or controlled, drugged, managed, put away? Why aren't we giving them something to do? Why aren't we giving them a role that suits their unique gift and giving them more support in how to have functional lives where they can remain at least mentally stable enough to give their gifts to society? That, to me, a worthy endeavor.
For sure. I hear what you're saying 100%. I do think that borderline personality disorder has been really stigmatized. And in fact, that title, apparently, according to Dr. Ramani, who is the narcissism specialist, but she also talks about borderline. She talks about how it's a misnomer, and really what it is, it's an emotional and relationship dysregulation disorder.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's highly stigmatized. It's in my family as well. We've had this conversation many times. And the other part of it is that big pharma can't make any money. They got to keep people labeled with these diagnoses, right? Keep them on these meds and like, oh, your meds aren't working. There's a new generation. There's a second generation. Try that, right? Or if you're having issues, detoxing from this antipsychotic or antidepressant, it actually means you need more medicine or you need this new medicine, right? And we could do a whole podcast episode
or maybe
on...
you need a culture that's not making you sicker.
Exactly.
I mean, is my mother borderline, or was she just trying to be a doctor in the 80s? Honestly,
right. I know.
Be married to men who absolutely didn't respect her. I mean, come on, like, are you crazy, or are you just living in a world that's making anybody crazy? Honestly, sometimes it's a fine line.
Yes, I agree 100%. So, okay. I want to just switch topics a bit because in the Ancestral Healing Collective, we engage with astrology as a framework and a language for ancestral healing and for understanding yourself as an energetic vessel, as an energetic being. Do you know your sun, moon, and rising sign by any chance?
You would know it better than... You're the expert on this.
What's your sun? It's Virgo, right?
Virgo. That's my sign. Yeah, Virgo.
Your sun sign. Yeah, that's where the sun was the day that you were born. I don't have your chart pulled up in front of me, but okay. So Virgos can be very hard on themselves, right? The sun in our birth chart is where we shine from a 3D perspective, and It's how we see ourselves. It's our egoic selves, but it's also the special sauce that we put into everything that we do that makes us stand out from the other 11 astrological signs. And each astrological sign is a spectrum of psycho-spiritual energy with a high expression and a low expression. So I always find this so interesting. The cool thing about Virgo, I'm a Virgo moon, so I relate. And your moon is your ancestral wounds and your emotions and what you're responsible for giving to yourself and taking care of for yourself in order to feel at home in your own energy and centered in your own energy. So when I say do your moon, that means like take care of yourself, love yourself, nurture yourself. Virgo is interesting. Virgo is mutable earth. So earth is what we use to build the structures that give us stability and security in our lives. And it's money, it's our resources, it's our values, it's the intangible assets as well as the tangible assets. So it's like our personal values. So when we have mutable earth, it means that you are changeable and adaptable. And you certainly are changeable. You certainly are adaptable. And the high expression of Virgo is refining, right? Improving, making things better, organizing, being detailed oriented. And Virgo is also a healer. So Virgo is ruled by the planet Mercury, but it's also ruled by Chiron, the wounded healer, which is the asteroid that was discovered in 1977, associated with Christ consciousness, that reveals our deepest wounds and our healing powers. And those powers are available to us when we start to transmute those deep wounds, which are often ancestral. So the lower expression of Virgo is that we can be very perfectionistic. We can be so hard on ourselves. So can you speak to your journey along that spectrum in terms of wrangling with perfectionism?
Let's just say that I'm doing a lot of work to free myself from any sense of perfectionism. I mean, some of it was done for me. I went to the hospital to give birth and my baby died. There's no illusion of perfectionism after that. Perfectionism goes out the window. Where it is deeply kind of insidious is in this view that, okay, well, now everything that I do from here on out, I have to do perfectly in order to make up for this horrible failure. And that can be really crushing. And that's an aspect of trauma healing that I've had to take on. It's pernicious. And it's very pernicious for women in general. This societal view that you gotta be perfect. I felt it very acutely after I had my two children. My two older children, I had them back to back. They're 16 months apart. And my body was larger than postpartum was larger than it had ever been before. And I'm also a woman working in tech and, living in LA. And I felt so acutely this, you are hideous and imperfect and you need to do something about it. And I had to really reframe that for myself, which is I want to get healthy and do the best for my body. And it's not about being perfect. It's not about dieting. It's about reframing my whole life so that, well, what is the food that I eat? The food that I eat is the healthiest possible food. And there's no food that is off limits to me, and there's no food that I don't eat. Being in my 40s helps with that too, because you can't get away with, I'm going to have, a donut and a Bloody Mary and then go like you did when you were 22 and then go off, to have your day. Like, I'm a green juice in bed at 9:30. I also have young children, and my husband and I run a tech company. But it's, the reframing out of perfectionism. I still wanted to lose weight because I wanted my body to be its healthiest self. And I wanted to feel good in my body. But how I do that, and am I whipping myself, and am I going on crash diets, and am I doing all these things that maybe in my 20s, certainly in my 20s, I would have done? Or am I simply saying, hey, you know what? let's start just eating much, much healthier. Many, many more plant-based meals, less sugar. Like, how does sugar even feel in my body? Allowing myself to even feel that in the first place. Like, actually, when I eat sugar, a little bit I like, but it doesn't feel that great in my body. So I eat a little bit and I'm like, yeah, I'm good, because I don't really want to feel like that in my body. I don't want to feel gross. But you can get very wrapped up into perfectionism, and it can be a real mental trap. And the goal is still the same: be healthy, feel great about myself, all of it. The way you get there is very different.
Okay. Yeah, I think it really helps people to hear other people's stories, because you're right. Female-bodied beings all over the planet deal with this collective wound of perfectionism, right? Trying to be perfect, trying to fit into a certain mold in order to be acceptable in society, in culture. Thank you for sharing that. Well, what are you working on now that you are excited about? I know you mentioned that you are writing a book. I'm so excited for that. You are raising these two magical beings, these two young elders. Can you speak more about like new stuff? Any updates you want to share since you recorded that workshop that's in our resource library?
I mean, we're building this business that I deeply believe in. We are at an inflection point in our society where decisions about our lives that were once made by human beings, like who gets a loan, who gets a job interview, who gets health insurance, who gets coverage for a major medical procedure, who gets car loan, all of it. These were once made by humans, these decisions, and now they are made by algorithms. My husband is the founder of Fairplay AI. I co-founded the company with him out of our apartment during the pandemic when we were pregnant with our older daughter. And I believe very, very deeply in the mission of this company, in how can we have AI at least poised to do good in this new inflection point in society. So I'm very passionate about this company. It's not my third child, but I love it very much, and I believe in it very much. And that has been a huge part of my life for 4 years now. I am working on a book. The book is specifically about my journey of trauma recovery. The book opens with the day that my daughter passed. I joke, it's not a joke, that it's Eat, Pray, Love meets The Body Keeps the Score. It's, the first section's in New York, and it's a rough read, but hopefully it's, meaningful to people who've been through trauma. And then the second section, I wind up in Charleston, South Carolina, which was kind of ground zero for my healing. And I'm finally sort of able to even just like open up and grieve. And then the third section is Silicon Valley, where I serendipitously got this offer to work with Facebook's communications team and Mark Zuckerberg's team to help change the narrative about Facebook and tell a different story. And from there, I was put smack in the middle of have women's groups on Facebook focused on issues of miscarriage, infertility, infant loss, and stillbirth. So all of a sudden, I'm right here in the nexus seeing all of this pain that I too was going through. So it was really incredible. And then the final section is I finished my contract at Facebook and I moved to LA and I heal. And I reconnect with you. I connect with Paula, who we both know, who is a spiritual psychologist. And I meet my now husband, and whose love healed me. And the book ends when I had my older daughter. And that's the span of it. I'm writing what I feel I would have needed. And it talks about a lot. It talks about why I entered the marriage I entered into. It talks about, what was my sort of dating life and fertility life in New York City as a woman trying to have it all. It's not that women can't have it all. It's the system does not support us having it all. And I'm not the person to say that. And so that's the story. I'm a storyteller. I'm a writer. I made my living doing that for many years. So I do it because this happened to me. I'm a writer. I needed this story, so I'm writing. And then my work on this company and being a mom and being a wife and having our family. Honestly, having friends like you and this life in LA that I have fought and bled and worked to create, that's pretty great for me right now.
Well,
And
I'm
it'll
so
expand
excited.
when it's going to expand, but for now, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this book. I'm so proud of you. So
Thank you.
before we wrap, this is the Cycle Starters podcast. I always ask my guests at the end of our interview, what cycles are you starting now in your family and in your lineages?
Deep psychological safety, community, and connectedness in our family. So you can talk about anything. You can say, Mommy, I am mad at you right now. And I'll be like, okay, cool. You have every right to feel the way you're going to feel, and you're going to be mad at me sometimes. Cool. Tell me more. No feeling is off limits. No emotion is off limits. No emotional reaction is off limits. Unconditional love and unconditional safety and freedom to spread your wings and be everything that you can be and want to be. And I say that for myself, for my partner, and for our children. That's really what I'm creating. And for the company that we've created, like everything around us. My husband likes the phrase an unbroken boulevard of green light. Like we can create for people that have not had that in the past. My husband is a founder of Color. It ain't an easy bag in Silicon Valley. But guess what? I don't care. We'll make it an unbroken boulevard of green light. So yeah, that's what I'm creating. And I'm very grateful to know you and thank you for having me today. And I think what you do is extraordinary.
Thank you for that. Well, so Melissa, if people want to know more about you, where should they go to learn more?
I don't know. I'm not much on social media these days. I think it can be, look, in the influencer age, I think it can be a real trap to be too visible. I think I was a little too visible for some of my healing journey, and I kind of regret it. I think I should have been off Twitter the moment I got home and my daughter had passed. I think I should have shut down on my social media. So I'm not really present on social media at this time. I'll create a brand, around this book and around this conversation when the time is right. You want to know more about me? Wait for the book. I'm doing more podcasts and I'm doing more speaking on this topic now that the 10 years I've come through the 10 years. So I'm feeling more stable and I'm feeling ready to talk about it more. So, I guess I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not really, other than that, I'm not that available. I'm not making myself super publicly available at the moment. I think everybody has the right to do that and to choose when to kind of come out in a more public facing way.
I love that. Thank you for modeling that for people, right? That they don't have to make themselves super available. I think that we could all learn from that.
Yeah, followers, as my grandmother always used to say, followers on social media. She had this phrase, that and a nickel will get you 5 cents.
Right.
Like,
Well,
what good is it, honestly?
my dear, thank you so much for
I
sitting
love you.
down with me today
My
and
pleasure.
doing this podcast. I love you. So we will see you next time on the next episode of the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care, everybody.